Community Scrutiny Committee, Tuesday the 16th of September here in the Council Chamber. I will start by reading the webcast and introduction. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be recorded live and will be capable of repeated viewing or another use by such third parties. Therefore, by entering the Council Chamber and using the seating area, you are consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and or training purposes. So my name is Councillor Jodie Lucas. I'll be chairing this evening's meeting. I have my Vice Chair, Councillor Lee. Along the top table, we have got Laura and Serena from Democratic Services. We have Lou Baker on webcasting. To my left, Nicola for Head of Legal and Deputy Monitoring Officer. And then we have Dawn Harrison, Housing and Service Director. And we have Keith, also from the housing team. Could I take, so welcome everybody. And we also have Cabinet Member Councillor Smriti Patel, who will be giving some presentations this evening. Could I please ask for apologies for absence?
Apologies for absence have been received from sorry, I'll start that again, Chairman. Apologies have been received from Councillor Pugsley, and apologies for lateness from Councillor Markham.
Thank you. Do we have any substitute members?
Substitute members, Councillor Bassett is substituting for Councillor Pugsley.
Thank you. Do members have any declarations of interest? Councillor Bassett.
Thank you, Chairman. I better declare personal non-pecuniary in item 7.11 by virtue of being the chairman of Qualis, and some of the statistics there relate to Qualis.
Thank you for that declaration. Okay. So we'll move on to the notes of our previous meeting, which is pages 3 to 22 of the agenda, which is from the meeting held on the 24th of June. Do we agree those minutes? Thank you. So before we move on to the work programme, this is a good time to mention how grateful we are for the work of Wynne Marshall on this committee, and it showed the value of having a co-opted member. And I just wanted to put it to members to confirm if you wish to maintain having a co-opted position, and if so, if we could have a proposal for that. Councillor Murray.
Yes, I'm happy to propose that. I think it's really important that we do have that co-opted position. And just for the record, because it was a lovely tribute to him, both myself and Councillor Brooks were able to attend the service at Haynor Crematorium, and it was a lovely service of recognition to for what he had done in the local community, among other things. But yeah, I'm more than happy to propose that we have an appointment to the committee.
Thank you for that contribution, Councillor Murray, and that will be seconded by Councillor Lisa Morgan. So moving forward with that, if we could ask officers to move forward with the recruitment of a co-opted member as appropriate, and then report back to this committee when necessary, please. Okay, so now we move on to the work programme, which is pages 23 and 24 in the agenda. And you will have noticed that I had agreed to add a new item on the agenda tonight, which is the damp and mould and other emergency hazards policy, which addresses the AWABS law. This was due to the implementation dates associated with the legislation, so we had to move quite quickly on that. And the decamp policy will now be presented at the next meeting on the 7th of October. And obviously, it's been mentioned previously that we're aware of the concerns of having a number of items and detailed policies presented at the scrutiny meetings. But as we've already added an additional meeting, I'm going to just suggest that we make our best efforts to ensure we scrutinise the policies as we have set out in the work programme. I would also like to mention that a briefing note was circulated in relation to Checkers B, which will be removed from the work programme. I do think it's still important that as a committee we have the opportunity to scrutinise the delivery of the HRA capital programme, and would like to suggest that we include a regular update, perhaps every 6 months, with the first update in January. Would members support that approach? Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Murray.
I would support that approach, and I just wanted to thank Laura for the email that we had, because I'm assuming Checkers Bay is the site in the Loughton Road in Ward with me and Chiddy represent Checkers Road, isn't it? That's how I read it. Checkers Bay is one of the sites in Checkers Road. It's not referencing anything else.
It's not referencing anything else, but I'd like to defer to Dawn Harrison to answer that.
Okay, to answer. Yes, that is Checkers Bay, Checkers Road. Thank you.
So, yeah, I've received that with real interest because it's, as I say, in mine and Chiddy's ward, and thank you for circulating that.
Okay, great. So I'll take that back to overview and scrutiny for approval for that amendment. Do members have any further comments or proposed amendments to the work programme? No. Okay, thank you very much. So we'll move on to our first main agenda item this evening, which is the annual housing performance report, which was pages 25 to 32. And we will have Councillor Smriti Patel as the housing portfolio holder who's going to present this report to us this evening.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and good evening, members. First of all, I just want to say that coming onto the housing portfolio from transformation, where the movement wasn't too much to do with, it was just being taken by the storm, I really have appreciated how much the officers do in the housing portfolio. So I really want to thank Keith and Dawn and all the other officers who've had input into doing these policy updates and all the paperwork that they've produced. So thank you very much for all the work you've done on it. Just to sort of say, the annual housing performance report, I'll just read it, take out the key aspects of the policy. I'm sure you've read it all, but if there's any questions, we'll take them at the end of this one. So this report provides an update on the housing and property services performance in the last financial year, 2024-25. It is one of the annual updates we provide for members, and it's one of the mandatory ones. The regulator of social housing, who we are anticipating may inspect EFDC in this financial year, rightly expects that our governing body, i.e. our members, are kept informed about performance. The regulator requires us to measure ourselves against the consumer standards, which include obligations to making our governing body aware and receiving an up-to-date information. In addition to these annual updates, quarterly updates on performance are provided with the council-wide reporting. A key part of this paper is the reporting of our tenant satisfaction measures. This is an annual statutory requirement. We carry out ours in 2 waves at the EFDC. We do have one in October and one in February. The next wave will start in the week commencing 20th of October, which coincidentally coincides with, we've got, what was it? I had made a note and now I can't remember. It'll come back to me in a bit. The satisfaction levels across the industry have been low and we are not satisfied with ours. So the overall direction of travel is not really where we want to go, but we are currently delving deeper into the ASB and the complaints, and perhaps need to do a little bit more to promote the good work that we do. So when having discussions with the officers, I've noticed that there's a lot that we probably do as a result of the feedback that we get from the tenant panels and things like that, but we haven't been very good at announcing all the good and all the great outcomes that we've had from that. So the TSM results are reported on the housing pages of our website. And one other thing that came up in that conversation is when we do this performance, correct me if I'm wrong, is we have this feedback, but it's for overall performance of the council and not just responses that we get are related to housing. Is that right? I just wanted to confirm that that's what we get. Sorry.
So the tenant satisfaction measures relate only to council tenants?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, yep, that was it for the first item number 7. Any questions?
Councillor Murray.
A couple of points of procedure before I say what I want to say. How are you going to do this, Chairman? Are you going to want us just to focus on the performance measures first, or the tenant satisfaction? Sorry, do you want us to look at just housing service performance first and those pages, and then after that move on to the tenant satisfaction measures, or are you going to just take it all in one go?
I'm happy to take it part by part. I think would probably make sense to if you're happy with that.
Okay, yeah, but I've got a couple of questions then on the housing services performance. But again, before I say this, again, it's just about procedure. I'm very happy to see the housing portfolio holder here, and to be honest, I would be very surprised if she wasn't here, given the agenda item. But unless I'm ill from last night and I'm still ill today, don't we normally have the presentation of the reports by the officers, by the professional officers, and then the housing portfolio holder takes part in any debate or answering any questions? There just seems to have been a change, and it hasn't been explained to us as a committee. It might be a good change, but I would just like to know why we've kind of changed the procedure.
Of course, very valid question, Councillor Murray. So when we had the chairman's briefing, I was informed that Councillor Smriti Patel, as the cabinet holder, would be presenting all of the reports this evening, which Democratic Services actually advised that is the correct protocol, and it just so happens that there's been a shift in culture, and that the officers have been taking that responsibility more recently, but the actual more, I'll use the words correct, but the more professional way is that it should come from the cabinet portfolio holder. I assume that Smriti wanted to do that within her cabinet responsibilities, but I will allow Councillor Patel to come back to your question as well.
Just a quick response in that. I'm keen because I'm a new portfolio holder, but also I did actually Google that, and what the responsibilities of a cabinet member is at overview and scrutiny, and it does say that we should be doing the presentation, and then any questions, of course, the officers are there. There's no way I claim to know everything about it or I'd be technical about it, so I will be referring to the officers for any kind of detailed technical questions as well, obviously if I can't answer, but I wanted to do everything I can on my part.
That's excellent, Chairman, that we're now doing it properly after many months of doing it incorrectly. Great. So the two questions I have on, and I'll say them both at once, the two questions I have on the, sorry, scrolling these down, on the housing performance is on page 27, we're told that, where is it then? Yeah, I just wondered about this figure. We're told that, and it's the penultimate one on page 27, the number of antisocial behaviour cases opened per 1,000 homes was 4.86, so that's just under a percentage, 5% of our stock. I wondered whether that was high or low, because to me that seemed quite high, that about 5% of our stock or our tenants are starting a antisocial behaviour case. And the other question I had was on page 28. In fact, I had two questions. It says that 2.3% of our homes aren't meeting the decent homes standard. So I wondered, was there a reason for that? Was there a particular failing? Was it a particular type of property? And then when we were told 117, so sorry, there's three questions. When we read there's 117 in temporary accommodation, I wondered how many of those were outside of the district. I know that we use Ilford, I know that we use Harlow. What other places are we using, and how many of those 117 are in temporary accommodation at the moment outside of the district? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for that question. Will you be answering that, Smriti?
No, I will refer them to the officers. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. In regards to the antisocial behaviour, that figure is a median, so it's not high, it's not low, it compares with our peers. With regards to the decent homes, the 2.3%, that has been attributed to the lack of thermal comfort in homes, but actually we think that's a bit disingenuous on our part because it just talks about loft insulation, and we can't found decent homes just on loft insulation alone, because there's a whole raft of different measures that would mean that we would fail. So we're looking to remedy that, put the insulation in, and make sure that we are reporting correctly on decent homes. With regards to the 117 households in temporary accommodation, I will have to come back to members on that because I don't actually have the breakdown. We do have some people outside of the district in Uxbridge, but I don't have the exact figures, but I'll bring that back.
Lovely, thank you, Chairman. Thank you.
Councillor Dadd.
Thank you, Chairman. Couple of questions on this part, and I want to come back to the other a bit later. Last year, I seem to recall that we showed the number of days of voids from the ending of one tenancy to another, and I recall it being about 30 days, which I thought was quite high. In this report, on page 28, it's saying that lettings average time from let to let general needs void properties post repairs is 7 days. I wonder if you can answer those two questions. Why are we looking at it differently? But also, having looked at the void of 7 days after it's ready, what are we doing to reduce that? Because obviously voids are loss of income. Thank you.
Dawn, please.
Thank you, Chair. So the 7 days is obviously the time that you've indicated once the repairs are completed until the tenancy actually starts. And we are looking to make some changes if we can possibly do that, because at the moment all our tenancies have to start on a Monday. So that's where we have a bit of an issue, rather than having tenancies that start on any day of the week. So that's something that we're currently exploring and are likely to bring that back for approval. We are also looking at the way that we're reporting on voids as well, because previously we've lumped all types of voids under one figure, which is probably where the 30 days came from, which would appear high, but that's not the way that our peers do it. They report on standard voids, which is your normal voids where repairs could be carried out as if a tenant was in situ, and then long-term voids, which are repairs that you couldn't ordinarily do with a tenant in situ. So, for example, you wouldn't replace a kitchen and a bathroom at the same time with the tenant in situ, so we would categorise that as a long-term void, and that's the way that we're looking to report for this current financial year going forward. But the turnaround time, yes, that does impact on finances and void cost, and the void rent loss, and we are trying to look at a way to have tenancies that start on any day of the week to reduce that.
Please do, Councillor Dadd.
Yes, can I come back on the statistics from last time, which were including repairs? What have you? How are you actually monitoring that now to see how long the repairs take? And I appreciate that some take longer than others, but now that we've got Qualis, we should be able to generally be able to get people ready to go in as soon as the tenancy finishes, unless it's sudden death.
So we do monitor the time that the void works are actually with Qualis as well. It's just for this particular exercise, we didn't include that in these figures here, but if you want those figures, we can absolutely provide those too.
Okay, so we have Councillor Sharif, please. Please do. Councillor Bassett.
Sorry, putting my call.
Sorry, Councillor Sharif.
We do actively monitor times of voids and do provide statistics to the council as what goes on. And to be honest, we're on the ball on all of that, and we monitor it very, very closely to get the right people in, because sometimes it could be you haven't got the right skill available on that day. And what we're trying to do is do most of it in-house now, rather than have to sub it out to someone, because A, it's cheaper, and B, you get your quality. Yeah, and also on the voids, the time taken does really depend on the state it's been left in. And I've been along to some, and to be honest, to get that one ready in sort of 20 days would be a small miracle. but we do our best, and we work very closely to make sure, and also if it is a major repair, we do have to come back to say this is outside of our brief, are you happy for us to do it? And that might add a couple of days in there.
Thank you for that input, Councillor Bassett. I'll move to Councillor Sharif for your question.
Thank you, Chairman. A few of my questions have already been answered, so that's even better. Value for money. Could I come to that? I haven't got pages in front of me. I'm not as organised as Councillor Murray.
Is that under the tenant satisfaction or under the housing performance?
I think it was under satisfaction.
Okay, we'll come back to that if that's okay.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll just see if there's any other more questions first on the housing performance.
No.
Okay, so we'll move to Councillor Nwuki.
Thank you, Chair. The housing performance, well, there seems to be a kind of inconsistency in the performance measures, particularly the decline in some tenant satisfaction measures, well, despite the overall good performance. I just want to find out what specific actions will be taken to address the TSMs that showed decline compared to previous years.
Thank you for that question. Will that be answered by you, please, Dawn?
Sure. We're working with the service managers and the team managers to look at what we can do to drive up those TSMs. One of the interesting ones is actually antisocial behaviour, because it's actually one of the only TSMs which is purely based on perception and not based on the service that's been received. But the regulator's not likely to change that, so that really is just a perception measure. We have gone down in some areas, but that's the same across the sector for lots of organisations, particularly around overall satisfaction and complaints, although our complaints, I believe, is actually, if I'm correct, going up. We're working with teams to develop service plans to drive up that satisfaction, and we're happy to bring that back to a later meeting or to share that information with members.
Councillor Nwuki.
Can I come back on that? Just want to understand, again, I understand perceptions are hard to satisfy and sometimes hard to understand, but have we done any work to understand why the perception is driving the lack of satisfaction in performance? What is the issues that is making people feel antisocial behaviour is getting worse in the area?
I don't think it's that antisocial behaviour is getting worse, it's about how it's being dealt with, and of course we are not responsible. When we look at antisocial behaviour and the tenant satisfaction measures, it's only for our HRA or council tenants, but people presume that we can deal with antisocial behaviour even when it's not within our kind of control. So this is the perception, and it's about explaining to people what is actually our responsibility as a housing provider. And what we can and what we can't do. Unfortunately, particularly around antisocial behaviour and noise nuisance, people are of the opinion that we can deal with all types of noise nuisance, and some noise nuisance is just normal household noise and is not really antisocial behaviour. So we're trying to do work with residents to explain what really is antisocial behaviour. There's good neighbourhood agreements that we can get people to sign up to. It's about treating your neighbours with respect.
Thank you. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you. One of the questions has already been asked, so I look forward to hearing about the temporary accommodation when that comes through. The other one I had was with the complaints. Well done on actually improving it, because it does look like it has gone up. But what does concern me is the 14 cases that referred to the housing ombudsman. What are we doing about those? Because those, and that's only like 11.4%, but no, 10.4%. But that is a bit concerning in my book. Thank you.
Please come back.
Thank you, Chair. So anybody that makes a complaint has the right to go to the Ombudsman once they've exhausted our complaints process. And for people to go from a stage 1 to a stage 2 complaint, they no longer have to give a reason for escalation. And quite often, now with the changes in how the Ombudsman operates and their the way that the Ombudsman now works is everybody has the right to go to the Ombudsman, so people just want to quickly get through the stage 2 process, go to the Ombudsman. The Ombudsman advertises, we can help you get money from your landlord if things aren't being done, etc. So the Ombudsman is actually promoting cases to go to them, and people think that if they go to the Ombudsman, they're going to get the answer or get the result that they may not have received from us in our original responses. So Ombudsman cases are on the increases across the sector through local authorities and through housing associations and other housing providers. It's definitely on the up. The Ombudsman has had to increase their staff. They have increased the cost of being part of the Ombudsman scheme purely to cover the increased numbers of cases coming through. And people that are making applications to the Ombudsman are finding that they're often having to wait up to 9 months before the Ombudsman can actually look at those cases because of the increase and because of the encouragement in getting people to escalate in that way.
Councillor Brooks.
My question is, when I read the tenancy satisfaction report, I know our officers have a good grasp of what's happening in the sector. I wondered how our report would compare with neighbouring authorities. I'm East Herts, for example, Broxbourne. I'm not talking about a London borough, or housing associations that we've got in our area. The satisfaction, is this typical or a bit better or a bit worse?
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. And I believe what we'll do now is move on. I think those that indicated to speak on the housing performance have all finished? Or no, not yet. Okay. Could we just hold your question for a moment, Councillor Brooks? Is that okay? Thank you. Councillor Dadd.
Thank you. I note that the portfolio holder was concerned about the approach to complaints handling and the cleanliness and maintenance of the communal areas. But I also picked up about listening and acting and time for repairs. But excuse my ignorance on this, but I haven't seen the actual questionnaire that goes out, and presumably it's a standard one. But is it better to, or would it be worth considering having a more detailed questionnaire that is more specific to help us with these responses?
Councillor Smriti Patel.
Just to sort of introduce what we know, I'm just showing off. We have, so actually I did have that question myself when we were doing that. I was wondering whether the tenants were reading the questionnaire in a different way. Does that matter? But we are, it is mandatory to have the questionnaire the way it's laid out for us. But we are allowed to have additional if we want to, but it will just make it a lengthy process. But Dawn can explain better if you want.
Please do, Dawn.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Patel's correct that the TSM questions are prescribed and we have to ask them in exactly the same format so that we are consistent across the board with our peers. But as part of our waves of doing the TSMs, we do have other questions that we are able to answer. And I'm sure we'd be pleased to hear from any members if there are specific questions that they wanted to ask as part of that process.
Thank you very much. So I believe we can now move on to the tenant satisfaction. So I will take Councillor Brooks's questions first, and I'll ask Dawn to come back to you.
So we have a peer group who we compare ourselves with through Housemark. For specific authorities, we can adjust the peer groups and we can choose different types of organisations. That's a piece of work that we can go away and have a look at to get the comparators with specific neighbours. At the moment, it's done based on your stock size and your location, but there are other bits and pieces that we can do to filter that, so we're happy to do that.
Just one more question as well, if you wouldn't mind. This survey was done on the telephone, I mean, it's a big sample, basically. My question is about the demographic of, when we were sampling, did we make sure that we had a good cross-section, in the sheltered accommodation, independent living, and, families, single people, etc.
Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you. I think what we do, because we get an external company to do the survey for us on our behalf, they call as many residents as they possibly can to get the answers, and once they've reached that certain number of people, then that's it, they've got their survey. And then in the second wave, they will do, they won't call the people that they've already called, they'll try to get that from a different group of people. We don't prescriptively tell them who to call and who not to call. We just give them the whole database and they make their selections.
So they'd be unaware of the age or the demographic, roughly, of the people sampled?
We do ask that. We do ask those questions as part of the survey, so that we have that information, so we can do the analysis afterwards, but not beforehand.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to answer Councillor Brooks's point, I mean, I obviously don't know this company, but if this is a professional company used to carrying out surveys, I would expect them to use proper statistical techniques on our database that gave them a representative sample. I would be very disappointed if they were doing it in any other way, because otherwise the results can be quite questionable. I've always taken a really close interest in housing, so I'm afraid I'm going to be quite critical in what I say at the moment, because we all got a copy of this report as part of the housing bulletin on the 30th of July. And as soon as I saw that link, I happened to have a free day. As soon as I saw that link, I linked onto the report. And I have to say that I was, well, I certainly want to put it as harshly as I was disappointed by what I was reading. Extremely disappointed by what I was reading. I mean, some of the examples, and this won't come as a surprise to Miss Harrison, because I emailed her that day. Only 73% of our tenants are satisfied with our service, according to this survey. Only 63% are satisfied with maintenance and cleaning of communal areas. Only 67% felt that repairs are done in a timely manner. Only 59% are satisfied with how EFDC deals with antisocial behaviour. Only 50% of tenants feel that EFDC listens and acts upon their views. On page 7 of the full report, we are told that only 38% of tenants would recommend EFDC to other people, and 30% would not recommend us to others. So I have to say I find that really quite difficult. And it backs up with what I felt as a member over the last 2 or 3 years, and I know this is shared by other Loughton colleagues who represent wards with considerable social housing. It just confirms in a statistical way what I felt as a member. For whatever reason, housing delivery in Epping Forest has been going backwards. It's something that I felt that we could always be really proud of. Our tenants always gave us very high levels of satisfaction in previous reports that I can remember. And this statistically just backs up what I feel as a member in terms of how issues are responded to, dealt with. It would be completely wrong of me to give chapter and verse in this forum, and I've got no intention of doing so. But I just find dealing with issues is taking a lot longer than it used to be, and you're going round far more roundabouts than you ever used to. And I know this is a view shared by other members that represent wards like Loughton Road Inn or Loughton Fairmead. I would be interested in members from Waltham Abbey because they represent wards with large elements of social housing, and whether they feel the same. I think you've probably touched upon where we go now, but as I say, this just quantifies what I've anecdotally felt, that for the last couple of years housing services has been a little bit adrift, and that's putting it kindly.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Murray. Councillor Patel.
Yeah, just a quick one to respond to that. I'm sure you'll get a detailed response from Dawn in a minute. But yeah, I understand, I completely understand your frustration in terms of the figures that we're looking at right now. But let me assure members that we are doing everything we can to make these numbers look better as well for us. Particularly, for example, when you said 63% for us, I think we are definitely doing better than our peers. Still no excuse. We definitely want to get that numbers better. And we are working, we've changed our working pattern with Qualis, the way we communicate with each other as well as EFDC and Qualis. So we're hoping that we can come up with better numbers in the future. But if there's anything else you want to add to that, Dawn?
Thank you. I mean, I think there's always a lag. If we talk about repairs, the repair service has changed and it takes time to catch up and for the satisfaction to improve because it's always perception. People always remember the thing that happened 5, 10, 15 years ago when they're responding about on a repair survey, for example. The service is on the way up. We are seeing marked improvements in terms of getting things done right first time, time taken to complete repairs, but there is a lag, and there will be a lag in everything. And there's a period of catch up, and as we move forward, we are, expecting to see improvements across the board here as the perception catches up with the actual service that's being delivered.
Thank you, Councillor Sharif.
Well, Councillor Murray's stolen my thunder, so he's already asked the question. Thank you.
I'm glad that the response satisfied your question. Councillor Nwuki.
Thank you, Chairman. I think I will support what my colleague, Councillor Murray, just said, which is he's captured everything. But I have a few questions. Just want to find out, do I ask all the questions in one go or should I take it in stages?
How would you prefer? Are they long questions?
Yes, there could be. Yeah.
Could we do them one at a time then, please?
Okay.
We'll wait. If you ask the question, then get the response, and then I'll come back to you for your next question.
Thank you, Chair. Well, on the tenant satisfaction, page 30, I believe whilst the report shows how we're consulting and the survey we're doing with residents, one question I have is what mechanism do we have in place for tenants to provide continuous feedback beyond satisfaction surveys?
Sorry, bear with me just a moment. So we have resident panels, we're setting up resident panels, we have resident engagement events. My colleague looks after the resident liaison officers. They are, as I say, they have regular events with residents. People are given the opportunity to share feedback with us then. We also have a partnership working with Qualis. And we are looking at, I think we've got a repairs panel set up already so that we can get feedback from residents as part of that. So we're working on developing further resident engagement opportunities so that we can get people on board. I think our resident and leaseholder committee has kind of quietened down a bit. We're looking to reinvigorate that and get new members. I think the membership had dwindled a little bit, and that's something that we're trying to re-energise as well, so that we can get the views of our residents across the board.
Just to come back on the first question, just what you said in terms of the membership dwindling, perhaps because residents are not seeing any outcome from their feedbacks. So my comeback question on that would be, what will we do to ensure that feedback has been used to improve our performance?
So there are opportunities for you, said we did. So we want residents to know that the feedback that they give us, we are acting on it, and then it doesn't just disappear into a black hole, never to be spoken about again. I mean, I can't really say what's gone on before, but I can only talk about now. That's something that I'm really keen on, that we are delivering for residents, and that we do what we say we're going to do, and we keep our promises, and that we listen.
Thank you. I'll move on to the next question, which is paragraph 3 on page 30, which referenced the discussions around the newly launched housing complaints panel, which you just referenced to. So for me, although the report highlights the satisfaction in complaints handling, there is no concrete plan outlined to improve this. So my question is, what specific strategies are being implemented to improve complaint response times?
Dawn?
Thank you. So there's no strategies per se in improving response times. We have dedicated response times. We have 10 days. We have regular meetings with our complaints team, who are not part of the housing team, but deal with complaints across the whole of the council. They're regularly monitored by service managers, by myself and our performance working groups. They are reviewed on a monthly basis as well. And, you know, for stage 2 complaints, it's 20 days. So there's no strategy, but it's very clear to people that actually these are the response times. We have the option to send holding responses. If complaints are complex and we can't respond within those time frames, then we should be using a holding response in conjunction with the complainants so that we can have the time to be able to respond within the time frames that are agreed with the tenant in terms of a holding response.
Just come back on that response. So how are we measuring the effectiveness of the way we're responding to that? How are we measuring that to ensure that residents are happy with the outcome or the prolonged period their complaint is taking to be resolved?
So if we can't respond, as I say, within the 10 days, then we should be speaking to residents to say that we need an extension of time, and that time should be agreed between the complainant and the resident. Between the complainant and between our officers that are doing the responses. So that should be an agreed time frame. And if residents are dissatisfied with that, they can escalate to stage 2.
Thank you. My next question is in terms of the relative performance, because we mentioned that about quite a bit in the document, comparing our performance to our peers. So I think my question here is, how do we ensure that being above average is not used as a substitute for improvement?
There's always room for improvement, and being average isn't good enough. We want to be better than average.
So what future goals are we setting to ensure that that is the case, we're improving, not just comparing ourselves to our peers?
I mean, it's early days. I've been in post not for very long. This is the first set of satisfaction measures that I've seen. It's for me to develop those strategies and to work with my colleagues, my service managers and all of the teams to drive up satisfaction, to see what we can do to improve services. That's why I'm here. I want to improve services for all of our residents, and that's what I'm working towards doing. But as I say, it's early days at the moment.
So would it be fair for me to assume that next report we'll be saying it's not just for us to compare ourselves to our peers, but to show clear performance improvements?
Absolutely. I mean, we compare with peers because that's what everybody else does, but we want to be better. We want to be in the top quartile. Median is not the place that we necessarily want to be.
I think Councillor Patel would like to respond.
I mean, just to add to that, I mean, the answer Dawn's given is complete, but the only reason, like we do compare it to the peers as well, it's also so that we understand what the trends are going on out there as well. Because, for example, if we see a figure and we think, oh my God, we're so bad at doing this, but it may be that there's across the country there's a trend or there's something happening or, you know, there's an event or whatever it is that's causing that to happen. So at least it's good in a way to get that kind of a baseline to see where everybody else is and where we are against it. It's not in a way for us to say, well, we're doing better than them, so we're good. It's more, yes, we're doing better than them. We're still not happy with these figures. We're still going to try and continue to get those figures better. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sharif.
Thank you. Finally, I do have a question. How many tenants are actually actively involved in the complaints panel?
At the moment, we have 10.
10. Right, okay, thank you.
Is there any other questions? Okay, I would just like to wrap up that item. We've had great opportunity to to see to have the annual housing performance report brought to us this evening. Once again, I'd like to thank Councillor Smriti Patel for presenting that item, and also the officers that have worked on bringing that to us this evening and have answered all of our questions. And just following on from Councillor Murray's mention of Waltham Abbey, it wouldn't be right for me not to mention Waltham Abbey. So from Waltham Abbey's perspective, obviously we are closely monitoring, similarly to Councillor Murray, with his concerns in Loughton, to make sure that these figures are improving. So thank you in advance for your efforts to ensure that that happens. Okay, so we'll now move on to items 8, which is the pet and other animals policy, which is items pages 33 to 51 of our agenda, and again will be presented by Councillor Smriti Patel.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is one of the classic examples of things that tenants feel like they've not been listened to, but we are doing something about it. So we've had a lot of complaints in the past, and I'm sure Councillor Murray's mentioned it in the past, and also Councillor Dadd, who's wanted to comment on the pets and other animals policy. So we have listened, and we have produced this, making sure we introduce this policy, and we have something concrete that we can talk to our tenants about. So we've got... we know that the pets can be a huge support to individuals and family. We are, always looking for as much flexibility as possible for the families to have pets. But we also know that not all properties are suitable for some types of animals, and that situations where a pet can cause nuisance to neighbours, and that can lead to disputes as well, for neighbourly disputes. So again, these disputes can also be a massive time consuming for the frontline officers. So there's a lot of there's a drain on our resources, really. So this is why we haven't specifically said for dogs, because we also get asked if tenants can keep chickens. And we also know from discussions that we've got a tenant who also has a horse. So, so we've got some odd things out there, in terms of what they want to keep. So hence the policy does state other animals, to ensure that we cover households who may want to keep animals for any other reasons other than pets as well. So as well as the management of any animals to prevent nuisance, we also, of course, want to ensure that the animals are properly looked after. So we do not want to have to go down an enforcement route, again, more drain on resources, and also it's upsetting if people are allowed to keep pets and to let go of your pets as well. I know it can be a highly emotional, mental drain as well. So, our policy does aim to allow pets and other animals where possible, but with permission and only being refused when necessary. So, we are saying that check with us, because we'll have a better handle on the type of tenants that are living in those properties, what the type of the property is for the type of animal that they want to have. And once we've got that information, we can give adequate permission for them to have that animal. Thank you.
Okay, I will invite questions. So we'll first go to Councillor Dadd.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I want to thank Keith for the amount of work he's done on the previous one, which obviously EFDC have got the rules that they want to do, but it's much more flexible and more understanding for pet owners. There's just one thing that I would like to just draw your attention to, which I think probably should come out, and that's on page 50. It says EFDC maintain the right to restrict the number of pets allowed in the property. Permission to keep a pet is specific to your current home and the pet on your application. It's also conditional on you being a responsible pet owner. If you want to place your pet, and then it's put, or keep any offspring, you must request permission and complete a new application. Yet it does say you shouldn't be breeding from them. So I think perhaps it might be safer to take that phrase out unless there's a particular reason for it being there. Thank you.
Keith's nodding, so yes.
Okay, thank you for that. I believe that amendment will be noted and implemented from the nods. Councillor Murray.
Yes, I want to say a big thank you to Mr Bowman in terms of how this has evolved. and I think Councillor Dadd has had considerable involvement in that. So I don't think I'm wrong in publicly acknowledging her role in that. If I am wrong, I'm being nice to her unnecessarily, but I think she does deserve a thanks for her involvement. I have a few relatively minor questions, I think, and they will have quick answers, I think. And I may have missed it because this is quite an important point. Is this a policy going forward, or will it be applied to retrospective situations that don't meet the policy?
Councillor Smootey.
Sorry, yeah, I would have said it's going forward, yeah.
That's what I was hoping to hear. Secondly, and so they're relatively minor questions. Somewhere in the report, in fact, it's paragraph 2.2, evidenced need for a support animal. So what type of evidence are we talking there that someone who has a support animal, what kind of evidence are you thinking that housing would need?
Sorry, Chair. I would have thought things like guide dogs or something like that, isn't it? If you've got an official document that says, yeah, you're required to have one. But yeah, if there's any more expansion.
Dawn.
Medical evidence.
3rd out of 4, and as I say, they're relatively minor questions. There's lots of flats, particularly around the Debden estate built post-war, the 4 block flats, Torrington Drive, it would be perhaps the largest example of it. The flats have clearly their own designated garden, but the upstairs flats have to go for a communal garden area to get to their own individual gardens. Would those flats count for the purposes of this policy as a flat that have their own gardens?
Yes, I've got the nod. Yes, yeah, it would. Yeah, thank you.
Lovely, that's the answer I was hoping for and assuming, but just wanted to clarify. And my 4th question was, I just wondered how much tenant engagement, leaseholder engagement there had actually been when the publicity over the draft took place.
I'll refer that to you guys.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. This one we did take to the tenant and leaseholder panel. It was still operating at the time, and they came back with some comments, fairly minor comments on that. We also published it online, and we have a database of around about 700 tenants who've said they were willing to engage with us over things. So we sent emails to them as well. We only had a couple of comments back. One of them very much in line with Councillor Dadd's comments about the flexibility that people need to have pets, and we incorporated those within the report.
Right, I'm pleased to hear that, because to me as a lay person that would sound quite a high level of engagement that 700 tenants or leaseholders said they wanted the draft email to them, even if they didn't then come back. So that's excellent, and we've got a good policy here, I think.
Thank you for those questions and comments, Councillor Murray. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you. Actually, Councillor Murray's already asked a couple of them, but I have had a few tenants that have contacted me that are very concerned because they actually live in flats that don't have gardens and they have dogs. And they're really concerned that they're going to end up not being able to keep their dog, along with people that have got, it does say in here, small aquariums, and they've got snakes and things. And obviously they're in relatively large ones, but they grow and they don't want to give up their pets. How are we going about that? Do they have to apply now, or do they get an exemption? They're really concerned about it, and it's on the Limes Farm estate near us. We've got lots of people that have got spiders and snakes and all sorts. I'm ever so sorry, but don't worry, because I did have it put around my neck to see how lovely it was, and I don't do snakes. So they're really, really concerned about it, along with people that have got pit bulls and things, and said some people say they're dangerous, some people say they're not. And I've had so many calls and sort of discussions with people about this, and they're really concerned. And like iguanas as well, I just saw that on there. I've got people that have got that, and obviously they grow, and they're really concerned that when they get so far, does that mean they've got to get rid of their pets? And I've just like sort of confirmation before we have a look at this, where we agree, where we don't agree, and whether it's something they have to all apply for now before this is agreed.
I think the first part I can answer, which is to say, sorry, I didn't say.
That's okay.
For the first part, which is what I could say, is they probably don't have to retrospectively get permission. But the second part of that also is if we know of no nuisance because of that, it probably is something that's been flagged and people have been working on. And if it's a massive issue, I'd probably say case by case, I would have thought.
Dawn.
If I could just add, the thing about aquariums, it's not about aquariums for snakes and spiders and things like that. It's about fish aquariums, because it's the weight of the water, and it's about whether the floor structures can actually take that weight. So that's where small aquariums comes into it. It's more about aquariums that contain water rather than other animals. Thank you.
Councillor Morgan.
Thank you for that. So I can actually go back to them and just say, as long as it's not a fish aquarium, they don't need to worry too much, but contact you if they're concerned. Is that fine? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Naruki.
Thank you, Chair. You'll be glad to know that Councillor Morgan has asked one of my main questions, but I will just say, how do we ensure that the enforcement measures is fair and appropriate going forward?
Dawn.
I mean, I suppose it depends, enforcement measures by fair and appropriate. If we have somebody who has a dog that's constantly barking day and night and disturbing other neighbours, then I think the enforcement measure, it would be appropriate for them to make alternative arrangements for the dog, or to keep it inside so that it's not barking. I mean, it needs to be proportionate. You know, if somebody's got an iguana, for example, and they take it for a walk, which some people do, you know, we're not going to say you can't keep it. I mean, it's about the impact on neighbours, and it's also about the impact on the animal itself, because if an animal's not being treated properly, that's really clear in the policy that, you know, we would need to put some kind of enforcement in place if animals are not being treated appropriately either. So it's about proportionality.
Councillor Brooks.
I think this is an excellent idea, and, you know, thank you for doing this. My concern really is, this is the policy going forward. I can think of one household in one of the large blocks of flats on the Oakwood estate, because I know someone who was a neighbour who felt quite intimidated by their, I'm not an expert on dog breeds, by the way, but Rottweiler type, and they didn't just have one. Now, I just wonder, my only concern is, are we giving our tenancy officers a bit of a nightmare? Because a new neighbour moves in, they apply to have a dog, and then there's someone down the corridor, you know, who's been there 3 years. That's you know, my only concern is that it could be very difficult for the tenancy officer.
Who would like to respond to this?
Just as a quick thing, is just that we've got the same thing with planning and things like that, isn't it? Where people move in next door or don't like what the previous tenants have done. So, yeah, it's a tough one.
Dawn, would you like to add to that?
It is quite difficult, and I understand that, but we need to be fair to people that do want pets and people that don't want pets. I mean, if it's a one-bedroom flat, for example, you've got a couple and 2 children, they want a Rottweiler, then we're likely to say no because it's not a suitable accommodation. So everything needs to be taken into account when the applications are being made. Is it putting more work on the tenancy team? I think their work is cut out as it is, dealing with complaints and things like that, but if we're in control of where we allow pets to be, that will give them more power and should actually ease the workload that they actually have in terms of pet disputes.
I hope so, because I also hope that, I think in the past I've felt sometimes where where someone's dogs have been a nuisance to others, they haven't always necessarily been had enough involvement from tenancy officers. and other neighbours have felt intimidated to say too much as well. But anyway, thank you. I'm glad that it will be clarified. I know I can think of a high-profile RSPCA prosecution of one of our tenants some years ago on the Oakwood estate where dogs were abused ridiculously. But I do welcome the fact that particularly, I think there's been a change. Since I was first a councillor in 2008, more people have a dog. There are a lot more dogs around. You know, to me, we've become a bit more dog-friendly, but as a society, and people are more accepting of them generally. But I can also think that when the antisocial stuff, if people consistently, rarely have we prosecuted anyone for dog poo, you know, even though their dogs were messing up the estate. You know, anyway, sorry, it's a non sequitur.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. Councillor Murray.
Very short question that I've just thought of, and it may be tucked away at the end of the report. What's the review period of this policy? Because I think it would be, I mean, we've got to make it long enough to make it useful, but equally it would be good to see how it works in practice and have a review period. If there isn't one, would the officers suggest what a meaningful review period would be?
Dawn?
So the current review date is 2030, 2031, but if members felt that we should do something sooner to see how it's going, then of course we'd be open to look at that.
How do members feel about that review period? Is there any proposals for any difference?
It does seem quite long to me for what is a new policy. I was thinking of maybe 3 or at the most 5 years. It's got to be long enough to be meaningful, I accept that.
I think we would need somebody to propose an amendment if you wish to take that forward.
I mean, I'm happy to listen to other people, but I would suggest 5 years.
5 is what we currently have. 2030, we're in 2025, right? 2030 would be 5 years.
Yeah, it said the reviewing the strategy currently says the policy will be reviewed after 5 years from the date of coming into force.
Should bring it shorter.
Okay. Councillor Lee.
Yeah, I've just got a question. Because in some of the estates, you've got someone's now bought their council house, and I know that some people there was having problems with tenants, with these dogs, that kept jumping over the fence and wrecking their garden and everything else. And I personally didn't find that it got resolved very well. So just what is the policy with that? Because they're private owners, what are they supposed to do when they're reporting it and to them they didn't feel like the council was dealing with it now? So how do you go about that?
I think I'll have to come back on that one, because if they're a private owner, we have no jurisdiction as such as a housing department, and we'd have to look at other areas of enforcement, but I'll need to come back to you.
But you must surely be able to stop something with them if their dogs are out of control, if they're in a tenant's position.
So if they're are you talking about a private owner's dogs jumping into somebody's garden?
No.
Oh, a
it's
tenant.
the tenant.
Oh, I see.
They've
Sorry,
bought
I
their
apologise.
house,
Yeah.
And the tenants have been changed a couple of times, but they had quite a problem with the tenant there with these dogs, and they were wrecking it, and that by what they were telling me, that when they'd said about it, the council had said, well, it's down to them to keep fixing the fence, which is might be okay and might not be, but why should then a private person have to keep fixing a fence when it's tenants that are wrecking it and their dogs were causing havoc? Surely we can do something, because it must be classed as antisocial behaviour.
Yeah, I'll have to take that away and come back to you.
Thank you.
Okay, so there's two decisions to be made on this item. So the first one is to agree the policy at this report for referral to Cabinet for approval with the comments that have been made as amended. Are members happy with that?
I think so.
Thank you. And the second one is to agree that minor changes to the policy that affect process are to be agreed with the portfolio holder. So that would possibly help with the review period that people was concerned about as well. So is everybody happy to agree that minor changes to the policy that affect process will be agreed with the portfolio holder? Thank you very much. So that is that item. So we'll now move on to housing domestic CCTV policy, pages 52 to 58 of the agenda. And again, we'll have Councillor Smriti Patel to present this item.
Thank you, Chairman. With this one, basically, we've got a housing domestic CCTV policy to review and comment tonight. This policy covers ring and video doorbells, as well as other types of CCTV that tenants and leaseholders may have installed or want to install at their homes. This does not cover CCTV set up by the council or our partner agencies. The tenancy agreements and leases do not cover any types of CCTV specifically. The tenancy agreement does require any adaptations or other works to a home to be agreed with the housing team in advance. Therefore, any CCTV that would require hardwiring or significant installation, example, bolting cameras to external walls, would need our permission. Permission for domestic CCTV, meaning ring doorbells, etc. as well, itself is not required. The policy emphasises the need for referral to the Information Commissioner's Office advice for both households who want to or have installed video and camera doorbells and other forms of CCTV, and anyone who takes issue with the installation by neighbours. I know this has been a tough one for the officers because we've had tenants ringing to say, oh, so-and-so's got a ring doorbell, their camera can see our door. But if you're in a flat or a corridor situation where there's no other way of handling that, you know, it's been tough in terms of writing up and how we've had to introduce this policy. So, yeah, thank you. It's for your questions, if you've got any.
Do we have any questions on this policy? Councillor Sharif?
Thank you, Chair. What's the escalation process if a resident believes a neighbour's CCTV actually is violating their privacy?
Dawn?
It would be through the information, the IOC.
Councillor Bassett?
Thank you. Just something I remember from when I was portfolio holder. There is a link to how to install external CCTV, who they can point at, what they can't do and what you mustn't do, like overlooking the neighbour's garden and all of this. Might be worthwhile putting the link into that. I got it from Adrian Petty.
There are nods that that will be included. Councillor Naruki.
Thank you, Chair. In the report, although, forgive me, I can't remember what page it is now. It's about clarity on retrospective applications. So I can't, I'm trying to find out where it is, but I can't find it at the moment. But the policy states that the retrospective application of CCTV installation will be reviewed. But for me, I'm not sure what process, the process is not clear. So the question is, what criteria will be used to evaluate retrospective applications for existing CCTV installations, the ones that have been already installed?
Keith, please.
Thank you, Councillor. In essence, it depends what the installation is required. If, for example, it's required some significant works, like people bolting things into our walls or something like that, or hardwiring things into the electric, then we want to review that the works have been done safely and adequately, and that would be the nature of the review. Whether somebody actually has CCTV up, we're not that. There's not much we can do about that. The tenancy agreements predate the sort of enthusiasm for ring doorbells and that at the moment. So we would point people at the Information Commissioner's Office and say, there's the guidance that you really want to follow and that we expect you to follow. It's only if there are works that are carried out that we'd want to carry out some kind of review to make sure they were okay. Is that right?
Councillor Naruki.
Come back to that. So if a CCTV is already fixed to the property, major works done, wiring, everything, will there be a time frame for the retrospective application to be put in so that you can look into it and see what impact that is having?
Thank you, Councillor. There wouldn't be a specific time frame because we don't know when we're going to find out about it. It may be that the resident comes to us and asks permission, that's fantastic, or it may be that we find out about it through a stock condition survey or a tenancy audit or something of that sort. So I'm not convinced that a time frame would be appropriate because we may find out about it at any time.
Thank you. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you. Chidi's just asked my question, so that's fine. But just adding on to that, so when we're looking at these retrospective things, if people have got the Part Ps and things for the hard wine, is that fine, or will we still require other things upon that?
So any alterations to properties, residents are expected to make an application for an alteration to the building anyway. Part P would be acceptable as part of that process once approval had been given for the installation to happen.
Councillor Nuriki.
One more question just came to my mind. Where there's CCTV already installed and is causing concern and community relation broken down, is there any possibility for EFDC to help in the restoration of community trust and engagement just to build that relationship back up?
Dawn?
We could offer some mediation, yes.
Okay. Is there any other questions on the housing domestic CCTV policy? Councillor Morgan?
Sorry, I've just thought of one more. So if, obviously some people will have to remove their CCTV and things, are we, a lot of it that we've got, we actually use for Neighbourhood Watch and for the police, and they've used it as evidence for things. Have we looked into that as well? The fact that we may not now have that to support the police as evidence going forward?
Dawn?
So I think that the evidence that police have been able to secure has been when cameras have been aimed in areas that they probably oughtn't to be, because it should only be within the threshold of your property. Police will knock on people's doors and ask if they've got CCTV footage of things that have gone outside of that curtilage. That has been, that's not something that is normally permitted. Yeah, but if walking past, if you've got a front garden, you should only be in your front garden. You shouldn't be able to film the person walking on the footpath. So I think it's not by, it's not something that we would encourage or anything like that, because really that is breaching the rules of the IOC. And it's just fortunate, I suppose, that police are able to sometimes get that footage from households.
Councillor Sheree?
It was just something fleetingly that came to mind. Technology changes so quickly. If things change, what's the process for updating this policy? What's going to happen? Is the decision going to remain with the cabinet holder, with the portfolio holder, or will this come to cabinet again?
I think in terms of technology is one thing, but the permissions and authorisation will still sit with the IOC. If technology changes, that's probably something for the portfolio holder to make a decision on. But we're still talking about CCTV on people's homes, monitoring outside.
Councillor Nuriki?
Thank you, Chair. Just want to get clarity from what you just said about CCTV being used in houses or flats, being focused on our properties. But in my mind, I thought that's a bit of a contradiction here, because I know the police have relied on a lot of CCTVs on those private properties when there's a crime on the street. So if the CCTVs are meant to focus on your property alone, why then would the police be knocking on doors to ask for CCTV footage of public highways? So how do we marry these two up?
Dawn?
As I've said, if cameras breach the curtilage of your property, you are, in theory, breaking the law, but I think that the police will turn a blind eye in that regard in the pursuit of catching criminals. And I can't say any more on it, really, than that. We would not encourage people to have CCTV that breaches the IOC rules.
Okay, so I think that rounds up all of our questions and comments on the CCTV policy. So again, we've got two decisions. So the first one, do members agree that the policy here at Appendix 1 to this report for referral to Cabinet for approval? Agreed. And the second, to agree that minor... With amendments. Sorry, thank you for that correction. And the second point, to agree that minor changes to the policy that affect process are to be agreed with the portfolio holder. Thank you very much. So our next item is the parking policy for HRA, pages 59 to 72 of our agenda. And we will go to Councillor Smriti Patel to present that to us.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So we've got the parking policy for HRA. Parking on our estates continues to be a contentious issue, and it is unlikely that we will have opportunities to increase parking areas. We want to be able to give residents the opportunity to propose changes to parking arrangements and for such proposals to be considered and voted on by all tenants and leaseholders that will be affected. This policy only applies to parking on HRA land. We will use the same processes for general parking addressed through the North Essex Partnership, traffic regulation orders with resident engagement. So that all is the same as same as it always has been through the NEP, basically. Any initial costs incurred would have to be found within the HRA, and any continuing costs may have to be added to service changes. Just to sort of also touch, this is for where tenants are already parking using their driveway sometimes, but it's going through some of the land that they shouldn't be crossing to create their own little parking area kind of thing. So giving the opportunity for the tenants in the area to say, do we want that to be a permanent arrangement? If you don't, then that's fine. But if you want it to be a permanent arrangement, do the consultation like we do and have a say in it like we have for a NEP for outside of the HRA stuff. So this is more specifically HRA land parking issues and giving opportunity for the tenants in the area to change anything they would like to change.
Thank you, Councillor Patel. So we'll go to Councillor Murray first, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This read relatively straightforward and I understood it. We've all got issues in our ward and I understand the days of big schemes that we were able to do, and there's at least 10 or 15 examples around the Debden estate where we managed to turn areas into parking bays have gone. My precise question was, I was a little bit worried about 2.2 where it said to fund any changes to parking arrangements, it's the HRA budget. Now, yes. I'm not against the HRA budget being involved, and if it's the odd bollard where we're protecting HRA land, HRA can carry that. But my ward has large areas now where the bulk of the properties will be owner-occupied, so they're nothing to do with HRA, but the land that we're seeking to protect will be HRA. Why would it be reasonable to expect the whole of the funding to come from HRA? We may have a situation, for example, where it's owner-occupiers that are crossing the verge illegally to park in their houses that they've bought. I'm not saying only owner-occupiers do that. I'm sure council tenants will do that as well. And then we then have to spend, with agreement with people living there, apart from the person who's doing it, of course, let's say £5,000 to protect that green space. And the bulk of the people around there enjoying that green space are in fact owner-occupiers. But because the land is technically HRA, which is the area I know best, the Debden estate, that would be HRA land, it come in just from the HRA. And that to me doesn't seem right, but why isn't there any general fund contribution?
I'll go to Councillor Patel first.
I mean, firstly, correct me if I'm wrong, Dawn, is mainly we would only be making those changes if a lot of the tenants wanted that change to happen. And if we're saying that majority of the tenants are private, then they probably won't go for it. So I don't think we would be using in that particular situation. We wouldn't be doing any parking changes at all. But yeah, if there are a majority of them that are tenants and we're making those parking changes, then we're saying we'll take it from the HRA fund.
Thank you, and I think Keith will come back to you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. I don't disagree with you at all. It would be good to do that. The part of our process, the reports and the policies go via our finance colleagues, as well as legal. And part of the advice they gave is that if we were looking to fund something, a change within HRA land, take into account what Councillor Patel has just said, that the drive would come from our HRA customers, if you like, then the funding should have to be provided from the HRA fund. So.
I think in reality, the distinction doesn't happen like that. The HRA land that we would be seeking to protect in virtually all circumstances, I would argue, that I know of, will involve as many owner-occupiers as it will tenants. I can understand why the people in finance will say, we want this policy. And in reality, because we're talking about relatively small amounts of money, then I'm happy to leave it in. But I just wanted to flag the point that this is about trying to help deal with parking in our HRA areas, and they're not going to all be HRA tenants, because that's just not how the right to buy has worked. And any of the land that is worth protecting where these measures would be needed are going to be mixed tenure types. But because we're talking about relatively small money, I will let this policy go. But I thought it was just worth flagging up that in any sense of real fairness, it should come from the contribution should come from the council tax fund as well. But we all know that that's not going to happen. So I'll be supporting this policy.
Thanks for your contribution, Councillor Murray. Councillor Dadd.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got two areas in my ward, but I've got quite a lot of parking problems. And there's a few things I would like to just go through, if I may. On page 1 of the report, 1.2, talks about the household increase number of vehicles, average of 12 cars per 10 households. I think it should be added there that they're increasing, especially in the less well-connected parts of the district. For example, in ONS 2021, there are over 2 cars per household in the Ongar ward. And then I'm also a bit confused about section 1.5 on page 60, which says that we can rarely increase the availability of parking. Now, why do you have to put that in? Because that can be done in some circumstances, and what you're saying is if you want to do it, apply to do it. And that's another point I want to come on to. It's not very clear how you apply. But if I could just then go on to 6, consultation undertaken. The tenant and leaseholder panel considered the policy. Can I ask from that, who is on this tenant and leaseholder panel, and is that represented from the rural areas as well?
Thank you for your questions, Councillor Dadd. Keith, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. I mean, as Dawn mentioned earlier, the tenant leaseholder panel is somewhat of abeyance at the moment because of not many attendees, and we're looking to ramp that up, but we're looking at some more local representation at the moment. So, for example, some residents in Ongar are recently talking about a residents' association. I met with them last week. So we're looking to do that spread so we can get a better spread across the district. And I think part of the difficulty has been that the district is so diverse in terms of its urban versus rural areas that's been one of the difficulties. Yeah. So Wynne previously led the tenant leaseholder panel, for example, and I think it'd be fair to say that the majority of people that we had along were from the more urban areas rather than the rural ones.
Thank you. Yeah, I also wanted to actually say you've got background papers. Surely in there should be the previous, and I can't remember what year it was, about the parking stress areas that were identified in EFDC. I know that the arrangements where they looked at the most stressed areas first and put arrangements for extra parking bays, but that ought to be accredited in there. I know we had to stop it because of money. And then going on in a similar vein, on page 64, why is your priority increasing supply of affordable housing when this is a policy about parking?
Who would like to respond? Keith?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, you're right. I need to take that one out of there. That isn't a reasonable thing to include, so I'll remove that.
Thank you.
Priority.
At the bottom of that page, conclusion, do we engage in a parking survey? That's a question mark, but there doesn't seem to be an answer about whether you are or you aren't. That's the bottom of page 64.
Again, my apologies. That was left in from an earlier draft. And
sorry,
I need to remove that. No, you're right. Thank you.
And then on page 65, the paragraph starting at our aim is to maximise opportunities for tenants and homeowners, blah, blah, blah. But it says, however, we can rarely increase availability of parking. But you're actually giving them the opportunity of how to do it. So should that section come out and just have, however, the needs of our tenants and EFC homeowners to park with respect for others. It should be, I think it's a bit, just saying you've got a policy and this is how you can go about getting more parking spaces and then saying we can barely do it is a bit contradictory.
Okay, sorry, Chair, what are you proposing we change it to, may I ask?
I suggest you take out the section that says we can rarely increase the availability of parking, but because your aim is to maximise opportunities to access safe parking, and then instead of saying including recharging bays for electric vehicles, and then say but need our tenants and EFTC owners to park with respect for others. So just taking out, however, we can rarely increase the availability of parking, and then put but need, because you're contradicting yourself by saying we want to do it, but we can't.
Mm-hmm. Do other members agree with that amendment? Yeah. Thank you. That amendment will be...
and then there's one other thing that comes through again and again, is that you're, again, on page 65, new developments will work with developers and housing association partners to ensure a fair level of parking is provided, but that for the numbers. But it surely should be in compliance with the Essex parking standards, because that is our local plan policy.
Lots of nodding heads, so I assume that will also be
I'm sorry, I've got a couple of others.
Thank you, Councillor. Continue.
Page 66, again, it refers to average of 12 cars per household, but this is higher in some areas with poor connectivity, for example, Ongar. And then again, under page 66, the local plan, it says the council is also considering the development of residential parking standards which are specific to the district to reflect local information on car ownership. But you need to actually say, but we've already got one policy in place, and that is in the Ongar Neighbourhood Plan, which is part of the local plan, and that is policy ONG-CT3. And then further on, you've got our proximity to London leading to commuters using London Underground stations in Epping. Surely that means in EFDC, because they go to Debden and Loughton as well, bringing more traffic in. And you've got new developments may have to include some parking to ensure they are attractive. I don't like that word. And they meet at least some of the needs of the residents, but they need to comply with the Essex parking standards. Now, the Essex parking standards does give the ability in urban areas to reduce the minimum parking standard requirements if appropriate. So again, you should respond to the Essex parking standards. That's our policy. And where people want to reduce the parking for flats near Loughton Station, for example, then that would be looked at individually. page...
Don't forget local government review of all of that.
Oh, yes, I know. Page 67, adopted HRA land, just safety, congestion and new developments predominantly are dealt with predominantly by Essex County Council. Do you mean Essex Highways about in accordance with their policies? I think that's probably what you mean. Because they, in planning, they look at the safety and new developments improvement schemes. They look at those aspects. And this is just nitpicking, I'm afraid. Applications to be made before the 31st of July to allow blah, blah, blah. At the end of the sentence it says, made after the 31st of July would not be considered until the following year. And I think you mean financial year. And I've nearly finished, sorry. You do say on page 68, schemes that do not meet all the criteria, but I can't see where the criteria are, because on the previous page you say with each application, the application will need to provide the following, and you've got showing a genuine proven parking safety, congestion or social need, etc. But that's not quite the same as criteria. Is there something I've missed there?
Thank you. Is that the end of
No,
your
I'm sorry.
questions? Okay, if you just hold 1 second, I'm just going to give the officer the opportunity. Are you okay with the way it's going to answer all of this at one go, or do you want to come back to what's been said so far?
I'm happy to, I mean, the amendments that have been proposed so far on the criteria, then they're within the links that are in there to the North Essex Parking Partnership.
Oh,
but if you
right.
think they need to be enshrined within here, then obviously we can do that.
I just thought it wasn't very clear. If you're looking, as I was, to help a group of people trying to get more parking, where is this criteria? I can find it. And then under page 69, under bollards, you've got, we will also consider extending parking areas where there's the opportunity to do so and will help to alleviate parking pressures. And I think that's a very important point, but should it be in a more general place rather than under bollards? And then again, I think that's it. You would be pleased to know.
Thank you. I'm just going to go to Jen Gould, who is online this evening, just for her input. Oh, yeah.
Thanks, sorry, just trying to get my microphone there. Thank you, Chair. What I was going to suggest was if Councillor Dadd would like, if she's made some notes, if she wants to email those in to Keith, and we can look at making some amendments and include those, the detail of what we've done in the minutes, that might be a bit more helpful rather than going through each sort of line by line issue that she raised.
Thank you very much, Jen. And Democratic Services had just made the same suggestion to me as chairman. So, if Councillor Dadd, if you're happy with that to happen, if other members are happy with that to happen.
If the committee are happy to put those forward, yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much. So I'll leave that with the officer and yourself to liaise. And once again, thank you for those questions. I will go to other members now for their contributions too. So, Councillor Naruki.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'll go to page 60, which is around the policy of appeal process. The policy states that there must be an appeal process for enforcement, but in my view, unless I've missed it in the document, lacks a bit of clarity on the process of how this will work. And on this, I want to find out what are the specific steps involved in appeal process for residents disputing parking enforcement actions, and how long will the appeal process take, and what support will be available for residents that are going through this process.
Keith?
Thank you, Chair. At the moment, there aren't any parking enforcement measures that have been requested, but if we go down the route of parking enforcement measures, it would be, as part of the process in conversations with residents, that we would be talking about what the appeals process might be if we introduced any. So far we haven't had residents coming forward saying we'd like to introduce formal parking enforcement within their area. At the moment, inappropriate parking or parking on our land which isn't right, we are stickering those vehicles, but it's very difficult to do much further after that. So at the moment I would say that that's going to be part of the process of agreeing what form the enforcement takes. And that's a bit thin, but hopefully that answers it.
Councillor Naruki.
In my ward, as my colleague will agree, we have a lot of parking pressure, and I know I've reported quite a few situations where cars are abandoned on parking bays, which, well, when it's abandoned, there's no road tax on them, there's no clear indication that the cars have been moved at all, and residents are struggling to find places to park. I've reported this quite a few times, and I'm minded to note how long it took for officers to deal with those cases, and I was a bit concerned when I saw on page 60 here saying there's no additional resources implication on this policy, and just want to find out how that would work if we're implementing this policy and there's more complaints coming in for cars that are parked in on a where they shouldn't be parked. How do we deal with it?
Keith?
Thank you, Chair. Abandoned vehicles would come under our antisocial behaviour approach rather than necessarily under the parking. Obviously, there's a big crossover between it. And at the moment, residents should only be using vehicles on our land, which is taxed and MOT'd. And if they are not, there is a process that we can go through with specific timescales. Apologies, I can't remember exactly what they are. But from when it's been identified that we sticker it, we ask people to get in touch with us. In order to find out, has it definitely been abandoned, then we can sticker it and say you must get in touch with us within X amount of time. If that fails, we then need to look at the opportunity for how we can actually get rid of it. How can we remove it from the land, which is where some of the expense comes in. I'm not aware of what we have got in place in terms of an approach for that, but I'm happy to come back again with more detail on that.
Councillor Naruki.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you. I'll be glad if you can come back with more details, because I know I had a long email exchange with officers with some views where that we can't do anything about it. That is, although it's on our land, not taxed, not MOT'd. And I was a bit frustrated to hear there's nothing we can do about it until a different officer picked it up and offered to make a visit. But I'm not sure what has been done about the issues that I've reported. So it'd be good to see what policies we have on that in terms of on tax and cars that are not MOT'd.
Thank you. Councillor Murray.
Check from that then, because whenever I've had an abandoned car that is on the highway, David Marsh's squad deal with it very quickly within the legal timescales. But are we saying that because it's HRA land, that service isn't open to us to use?
Keith?
I believe that's the case. However, if I can respond to both Councillor Naruki and yourself, Councillor Murray, with more detail on that. But yes, I believe that may be the case. Or certainly is a case we may have to pay, but I'll find out.
Thank you. Councillor Sharif.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a question for Keith, if you don't mind. How are disabled residents and blue badge holders going to be prioritised in this policy?
Thank you, Chair. People who require a blue badge and have got medical evidence for that, they can speak to us about maybe creating a bay for them, but that obviously increases the parking pressure on there. So we would look at where the opportunity was to increase the amount of disabled bays within an area where the need was existed. It wouldn't necessarily fall under this policy, which is more about what we can do to support the parking on our land.
One other question, if you don't mind.
What was that? Oh, sorry, Jen, you might need to turn your microphone off.
Just one other question, if you don't mind. So when residents request changes under this policy, what's the timeline? What's the time frame?
The timeline can be agreed with the residents as we go along. So it depends on the extent of the change that's needed and what level of consultation and support we'd need to find with amongst other tenants. So obviously if we're looking at something about including an additional bollard or something like that, it can be relatively straightforward. We can see who's likely to be affected by it and possibly move that ahead quite quickly. If it's on a larger scale and you're looking for, say, parking enforcement or something like that across a larger piece, then there need to be a longer time scale. And of course, it will come down to if there's a budgetary implication when we can actually do that. So we could potentially be looking at having to forecast it into future years to be able to pay for it.
Okay, is there any other question? Councillor Bassett.
Thank you. Just a slight one, putting a Qualis hat on. You've got about parking on HRA land with Qualis vehicles, but grounds maintenance would be, you can't exactly park it somewhere else and then carry equipment across to that spot. So there are occasions where, but all our drivers are instructed to be sensible in what they can do. And it's similarly the other thing, if they're out on repairs, they could have high value items in that van or heavy items and would need to park near the premises they've actually got to work on it. So obviously we instruct them to do what they can, but there will be occasions where it's just not practical to do that. And common sense, I think, is the main thing there. And if anyone phones us, say your van is outside, we do contact the driver and say, do you have to be there?
Thank you for that contribution. Would any officer like to come back on?
Thank you, Chair. It was a comment made specifically by the tenant and leaseholder panel, and I did speak to Debbie Casey at Qualis, and the word got out. It was more, I think, linked to inconsiderate parking on pavements, blocking sort of prams and wheelchairs and things like that. So I take the point that they're trying to be as considerate as they can, given the job they need to be doing at the same time.
Councillor Murray, did you want to come in on that Qualis point, or was it another question?
I wanted to come up on a previous point,
Okay.
partly to clarify my own understanding, but it will help other members. On the Oakwood Hill Estate, which is quite a defined group of roads, very densely populated, I would say probably as a development, one of our most densely populated, about 500 units, you know, in a very small area. We do have some bays that are on housing land that are designated disabled, but my understanding is that that's on the goodwill of neighbours. It's not enforceable, is it? It's not like a blue badge on the highways that you get through Essex highways. It's just goodwill, isn't it? And some people respect them and some people don't. But that's my understanding. Is that correct?
Keith?
Thank you, Chair. You're absolutely right, Councillor. It is. It's not something we can enforce on the land at the moment.
Councillor Morgan.
Thank you. This is for Keith. Keith, when you come back to the councillors, could you come back to the whole committee so we can actually all hear the answer? That's one point. The other point is, on page 69, I'm so pleased to see that we're looking at parking. Well, I don't need to go through them, but all the bits on page 69, I'm really pleased that they're on there. But maybe we could put about the North East Parkland Partnership, how residents can actually get in touch with them and do a big thing about it, because we do get lots of residents calling us, asking us how they get in touch with it, and they can't find it quite very easily on the actual EFDC website. Thank you. That's if they come out.
Thank you. Yeah, I would suggest to the officer if any of the questions asked could be included in the minutes, so then that will obviously be circulated to everybody. Is there any other response to that question? No. Okay. Councillor Sharif, did you have another question?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come back on the disabled bays, as Councillor Murray kindly pointed out. So if that's not enforceable at the moment, are you going to be looking at putting something in place so that is enforceable?
Keith?
I'm not aware that we can enforce it, I'll be honest with you, on our land. It's equivalent, I suppose, to private land. And whereas a blue badge or something would be enforceable out on public highways and things like that, I don't believe it would be possible for us to enforce it on our land. Not least because we don't have enforcement officers who would be able to monitor that or police it.
So if you don't have enforcement officers, who's going to be enforcing? Sorry. Who's going to be enforcing the parking? Is that council staff? Is it Qualis? Who's going to be enforcing the parking?
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. If a proposal comes forward from tenants to say that they would like to introduce parking enforcement within their area, then of course we'd be looking at what the cost of that might be, or whether we could be using some means by making it less cost on the tenants by using the fines and things like that to pay for it. But in essence, we need to find out what the proposal is from the tenants and work that through into a response. And so far, we don't have any proposals from tenants for enforcement in their areas. Is that fair?
Councillor Bassett.
Sorry, try my brain, being an old timer here. We use North Essex Parking Partnership to do our car parks.
And that may indeed be one option we can look at. If we introduce parking enforcement, that could definitely be one option where we look to contract with them to carry out the enforcement work.
Okay, is there any final questions or comments on this policy? No. Thank you for your contributions. So we'll move to our recommendations and decisions. So we agree that the policy, with amendments that are to be finalised after the meeting, to be referred to Cabinet for approval. Do you agree? And to agree that minor changes to the policy that affect process are able to be agreed with the portfolio holder. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you for your patience and contributions. We are getting there. We just have one more policy to look at, which is item 11, which is the damp and mould and other emergency hazards policy, which is the AWAB's law, and it's pages 73 to 81, and Councillor Smruti Patel will present that one to us.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, we'll be happy to know this is the last one to be discussed today. But before if I don't get a chance to say this at the end, I really am grateful for the members and how thorough they've been in terms of reading the policies and all the inputs they've had. So yeah, thank you very much for that. This one, the last one, you'll be aware of the tragic death of young Awab Ishaq back in 2020, who died due to a severe respiratory condition caused by prolonged exposure to mould. In his social home in Rochdale. Following his death, a coroner's inquest concluded that the mould was a significant factor, and the family's complaints about the moulds had not been addressed at the time. So this led to the introduction of the Awab's law, which mandates that landlords must investigate and fix mould hazards in housing within strict timeframes. This document sets out those timeframes and replaces the existing damp and mould policy previously approved. The law came into force on the 27th of October 2025, which did say we've got to introduce them into 3 phases. Phase 1 was the damp and mould phase to be included in phase 1, and then the other 2 phases are phase 2, which is enforced from 2026, expands to include significant hazards like excess cold and heat, falls, structural collapse, fire, electrical explosion issues, and hygiene hazards. And the phase 3, which is coming in from 2027, further extends into all remaining significant hazards under the Housing Health and Safety Rating System, the HHSRS, except overcrowding. And this document that's in front of you covers all of those phases for us as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go to members for questions. Councillor Murray, was you indicating? Yeah, okay.
And I will just remind members that the tenant satisfaction report on page 7 said that 3 out of 10 tenants said they were experiencing damp or mould. Now, I have to say that that figure on its own is very alarmist, and we need to know exactly what they meant by that, because I'm sure 30% of our tenants aren't experiencing damp and mould in terms of this item. But I just thought it was worth reminding members that was on page 7 of the tenant satisfaction survey. So my questions about this are, and I'm sure both answers will be positive, but I just wanted to satisfy myself. This meets all the legal requirements of the new law, and we're happy that we will be able to meet these timescales.
Dawn?
The policy is as per the legislation, so yes, it absolutely meets all of those requirements, and we already have a process in place for dealing with damp and mould, which is not dissimilar from the actual legislation, and we are confident that we will be able to meet all of these targets and timeframes.
Councillor Sharif.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions. Why is the next full review in 2030? Should the review not be, because this is quite new, should the review not be sooner, like a biannual, for example?
So it's legislative. If the legislation changes, we'll have to review it sooner, but we're not anticipating that legislation should change, and we will be complying with that legislation. So in terms of a review, we can review how we are performing against the legislation, but in terms of the actual legislation itself, we are governed by that.
Can I just add one more question? What's the contingency plan if the budget or the resources are stretched? Do we have a plan B?
I think it's like any of our budgets. They can be stretched. We set budgets for things based on what we know. We've had stock condition surveys carried out on our homes. I think we're up to about 85% of all of our homes. The damp cases that were referred to by Councillor Murray, they have already been referred over to Qualis, and I'm also not aware of any Category 1 HHSRS damp and mould cases that we've had to deal with. So in terms of budgets, I think we should be able to meet any demand with our existing budgets.
Councillor Dadd.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got a couple of questions, really, because this is a very important policy about this law, and that is how is the Council aware of these potential hazards? Because I went round with a grounds maintenance, no, I don't mean the grounds maintenance team in some flats in my ward, and a throwaway remark from somebody that they had damp in their bathroom was not picked up. It might be a different team, and how often are, obviously you don't go in to inspect people who are living there. We've already seen that one of the comments is the EFDC doesn't listen and their approach to complaints isn't particularly good. We know that people go out to work more, well, including mothers, go out to work more, so they don't open the windows in quite the same way. And also, if they're saving heating, they perhaps dry clothes indoors. But is there any advice given to tenants since this law about how to prevent damp and mould and what to do about airing the house? Things go back to what's happening about any inspections, how are you looking at ventilation and roof leaks, and what else can be done? Sorry.
Thank you. Dawn.
So information is provided to tenants, I think, at sign up. We also have information on our website about how to how to monitor damp and mould and how to prevent condensation in homes. In October, there's a National Damp and Mould Campaign Week, and we're looking to be part of that, and we're looking to do a bit of a campaign ourselves in educating people about how to manage condensation and damp and mould within the home, about airing, about ventilation and all of those things. So that's what we're planning to do to make sure that people are fully educated. The way that damp and mould will be reported, the plan is that we will have a surveyor going out. At the moment, damp and mould reports are going directly through to Qualis, and Qualis are sending out an operative. But what we want to do is to make sure that we've got a surveyor going out so that they can diagnose any particular issues, so that we're not just covering up or sticking a plaster on it by doing a damp and mould wash, that we're actually identifying what the actual root cause of any damp and mould actually is so that we can treat it.
Councillor Dadd.
Yes, I understand all that, but what I'm really trying to say is people don't necessarily realise what is already happening if they've got a little bit of mould in their bathroom, for example, or a bit of condensation underneath a window, and it perhaps, a throwaway remark is not being passed on, is what I'm trying to say. And can we do more and look at doing more to educate people?
Absolutely, and that's the purpose of the Damp and Mould campaign, to educate people, and not just our residents but also our staff.
Chairman, just really quickly, when I said I've forgotten what happens at the week commencing the 20th, it is the damp and mould week. So there will be a lot of information going out to tenants about that.
Sorry, Councillor Sharif, thank you.
Sorry, just one more question. If timeframes under this law are not met, is there a risk that we are the council exposing itself to legal challenges?
Yes, it's like any other compliance issue, like gas or electric. If we don't comply with that, then we do put ourselves at risk of breaching the consumer standards.
Is there any more questions or comments on this policy? Okay, so our decision is for members to consider and comment as we have, and this item will be referred to Cabinet. Members agree? Agreed. Okay. Thank you ever so much. I know that was quite a lengthy meeting, so thank you for your detailed contributions. Please can we note that the next meeting will be on the 7th of October at 7 o'clock. Thank you again to the officers and to Councillor Smruti Patel for presenting to us this evening. Good night, everybody. I close the meeting.